This is John Christ, the only guitarist for Danzig, and you're listening to Nothing Shocking Podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking Podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter at NoShockPod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We would like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
John Christ,
the original guitar player for Danzig.
Yeah.
Promoting a possible
reissue of Flesh Caffeine.
Yes, Flesh Caffeine, his one and only solo album on vinyl. That's what we're hoping for, right?
Yeah.
Well, hey, let's get to that interview.
All right. Good night.
Good night. John, welcome back to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
John, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Jeff. It's very nice to meet you.
Well, we are totally excited to have you back on since it's been, about 4 or 5 years since we first had you on. And I believe we actually interviewed you when you were at a dinner party, I believe, or something like that. You went into a closet and did the interview that night, I believe.
It's funny. In and out of the closet so many times.
Well, I guess the thing is that most of our listeners might not realize that you are a professor of music education at the Peabody Institute. Can you talk a little bit more about your journey into the field of music education?
It all started with a divorce. I was living in California. Let's see, things, weren't going well. And I was taking a break and hoping we could patch things up, because I was really in love with her and I wanted it to work out. But it wasn't going to happen. She made it clear it wasn't going to happen. So, California, you split everything down the middle, you sell the house, and you move on. What happened to me was right about that time, my folks are getting ready to sell their house and move into assisted living, and so they're going to have the last Christmas at the childhood home. So, they were always big on family pictures. So everybody's coming home for the holidays. We got to take this picture, yada, yada, yada. So the week before I heading home, I get sick, and doctors won't let me fly. I had to have an emergency surgery. So by the time I get home, we take the picture. One of my sisters is sick, and turns out a few days later she's got advanced lung cancer.
Oh.
And so she had an emergency surgery, and basically I stayed on the East Coast. I moved in with her, and I took care of her. And now her best friend at the time is my wife. of almost 7 years. After my sister passed, I was dating my wife. She wasn't my wife at the time. And it was a pretty intense thing. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. You know, local bands. You know, I would jam with a band, and they're like, "Oh, come join our band." And I'm like, "Well, how much do you pay?" They're like, "Well, $80 a gig." Oh, really? $80 a gig. And do I get a guitar tech? No, you got to carry your own stuff. Oh, do I have to set up my? Oh, yeah, you got to set up your stuff too. And what, we play 3 sets? Well, sometimes 4. Okay, so wait a second. I show up at 5, and I'm playing for 4 or 5 hours, and I get home at 3:30 in the morning for $80. And they're like, yeah, that's cover band money. Sometimes you might get 120 if a bunch of people show up. And I'm going, man, sign me up, right? And Nancy, my girlfriend at the time, she goes, you know, come on, man. What are you thinking here? And I'm like, well, I just, you know, I thought maybe I'd play some music. And she's like, well, not for that kind of money or not. So we looked around and a couple local colleges, and she said, hey, go sign up for some classes. So I anonymously signed up for some music classes, started playing in some ensembles, and even started taking some classical guitar lessons. And a few months in, it was a few months in before anybody discovered who I was. So here's John Christ studying classical guitar at a community college in Maryland. And in the country, I call it Gooberville. And it was funny. So playing classical guitar, and I'm playing in a rock and roll ensemble, and the theme was Tom Petty. So I show up, and I'm playing with a couple other local goobers, and nobody could sing. So I ended up singing this whole Tom Petty show. And then as you can hear me, I have a low voice. I don't have a high Tom Petty voice, right? So I had to fake it. But the solos were great, you know, so we had fun. At the end of the show, a couple of kids come up and they're talking to the director, and they're like, who is this guy? And they're like, well, this is John, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, well, is he a teacher? I was like, no, he's not a teacher. Well, we want to take guitar lessons from him. So, you know, my instructor said, all right, well, let's see what we can do. So he said, hey, you want to teach here? So next thing you know, I'm teaching the community college. I teach for a semester or two. Then one of the directors of the department, he also teaches at Peabody. He said they're starting a rock and roll program down there. Do I want to be a part of it? So I went down there in the first year or so. It was maybe like 3 years, actually, before COVID. And I had a couple of advanced kids groups, teenagers. And we were doing everything from a girl was singing Guns N' Roses. Let's see, what was it? She was playing that on ukulele.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
And singing lead vocals, and we had another violinist virtuoso that was playing the guitar stuff. And so we were doing all this eclectic stuff. I was like, what do you guys want to do? I said, what do you play? And she was like, well, I could play piano and this and that. And she sang great. And then we had another guitar player. All he wanted to play was... right? He just wanted to play Metallica all day long.
Yeah.
So we compromised. You know, we did a little bit of Metallica. We did some Guns N' Roses. We did some Kansas.
Nice.
Right? So we did that kind of stuff. And I played some bass and all this stuff. We didn't, you know, we were trying to get the groups to work, and whatever instrument they didn't have, I played. except for drums. I said, no, I'm not going to play a whole set on drums and all that. So that was the Peabody Preparatory. The conservatory was all filled up with teachers, but they wanted to start a new rock and roll thing at the prep. So myself and a few of my other colleagues at the community college all signed up. Well, 2 weeks later, they all dropped because Peabody doesn't pay. They pay squat.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm the only one teaching, so I get all these sections. And it was kind of cool. You know, I had an adult section and a couple of kids sections. And it went for a little while, but then they started revamping expanding the dance program and all that. And they wanted me to come teach weeknights down in Baltimore, 1 or 2 students. And I was like, it's an hour and a half drive for 2 students. You know, I don't know if I can do it. Plus the fact that when you added up all the hours I put in, I was making like $1.75 an hour for teaching there. So I was like, this is charity. And a lot of it was to have the Peabody, let's see, it was the preparatory, but it was a Johns Hopkins .edu email address. So that email address has a lot of status behind it. But one of my friends pointed out, he said, you know what? He said, it's on your resume. What more do you want? You know, do you need to keep doing it? And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go out there. I'm going to make a big stink again. I'm going to get my name going. Then I'll go back to Peabody and say, okay, this is what you should have done, right? And but they're old school, they're old money, they're run by Hopkins. There are a lot of great people down there, but the guy who hired me ended up moving on just to the conservatory, and they make you do like 50 jobs and they pay you for one, and it was kind of a tough thing. So then COVID hit, everything shut down, and I just started teaching exclusively online and Zoom lessons, you know, Google Meets and Zoom lessons. So things tapered off a bit, but then I started getting family and friends started calling me because they would have relatives or spouses that would turn 40 or turn 50, and they're like, hey, you know, I want to get some guitar lessons for my husband or my cousin or whatever. Can you call them on their birthday? And I'm like, yeah, I can call them on their birthday. If you guarantee you'll like Venmo me some money or at the time it was PayPal, but you know, I would call them and they'd answer the phone and they're like, hello, who's this? And I would go,
cool.
right? Give them that kind of treatment.
Yeah.
And then they would go, and I say, oh, I'm really calling for your birthday, you know.
That'd be the greatest birthday present ever.
I know. I was just thinking that.
Play them happy birthday.
Yeah.
And then if they're really good, I give them the whammy bar birthday.
It even gets better and better. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? Happy friggin' birthday.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So all of a sudden, I'm starting to get more calls, and people want birthday things. And the latest one, one of the recent ones that was kind of fun was there's a guy over in Ireland, Northern Ireland, he was turning 40, and his wife contacted me to see if I could, do some lessons for him. And I was like, sure. So I called him on WhatsApp, and he had no clue what was going on. And he was just freaking the you-know-what out, right?
Yeah.
It was great. And, a lot of things were happening here at the time. There's a lot of drama going on. But I was like, look, man, I'm calling you for your birthday. Your wife is awesome. She set this up. We're going to do a couple lessons, and we're going to do, I'll contact you with WhatsApp, and then we're going to set up some Zoom things. So I set up my Marshall rig. I still have about a quarter of my concert rig down in the barn. So I set it all up, and I got the BC Rich out, and I set up a camera and tripod, and he was just blown away. So it was awesome. And it turned into an interview. It's supposed to be a lesson, and he's asking me all these questions. But that was cool.
Yeah.
And now he sent me a video of his 5-year-old daughter singing "Mother."
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And and it was a really tough time because a very close family member passed away a couple months ago, and I still had to give these lessons to this guy. So I would let him know, hey, I'm struggling this and that. I'm trying to make things work, but I got a lot of obligations that I have to handle right now. And he was like, that's fine. And he said, maybe this will cheer you up. So he started sending me videos of his 5-year-old daughter singing little folk songs and stuff. And it was just like, it was incredible, And I said, that's got to be the cutest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. And now it doesn't matter what happens for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So, and he said, I saw you one time in Ireland, in Dublin, and he said it changed my life. You opened up for Metallica there. And I said, yeah, I said, that was the Injustice for All tour in 1988. And he said, yep. And I said, well, we played Belfast the night before, and that was the night that they found out that Injustice for All just hit number 6 on the charts.
Oh,
so
cool.
MTV had to play their album. They had to play one.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So cool.
So that was history. And since then, somebody reached out to me in America, said that they were at the show in Belfast when somebody pulled the fire alarm. We were on stage. They cleared out the whole place for 45 minutes, and then we sent us back up on stage, and the fans were spitting on us. Did I tell you this story, Eric?
No, you did not.
They were spitting on us so bad. And those are the early days. This was our first tour. So, Rick Rubin and Glenn were into the WWF thing, and Ric Flair and all that. So Erie and I would dunk our heads in water and cover our body in oil so that when we headbang, it would show the spray and the spotlights and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm out there topless, and I'm rocking away, and people are spitting on me, and I can see these white and yellow gobs starting to build up on my chest and arms. It was disgusting. And then I'm playing like Am I Demon or something, and I'm watching my fretting hand play, and all of a sudden this huge mass goes right on the 7th and 9th fret, right where I'm getting ready to play, and there's nothing I could do about it.
Oh man.
So I had to slide right into it. My guitar tech is looking over. I look over, just like wincing, and he's just like, he started throwing up. He was like, oh my God, that's so disgusting. And there was nothing I could do about it. So anyway, we finished the show and everything. And it was a shortened set and all that. And then we went back to the hotel and partied with Metallica, and that's when they told us the charting news and all. It was a big deal. So anyway, there was a kid that was there with his buddy, and his buddy bootlegged it. He recorded the show. So this guy said, hey, I'm going to see if I could track him down. He tracked the guy down. He made me a CD copy of it, and I have it archived, and it was so cool because the band it was our first European tour. We'd only done maybe 8 or 10 shows in the States. We opened up for Slayer on a six city tour, and we did New York a couple of times and New Jersey once or twice or whatever. And then boom, we landed this gig with Metallica. So we were playing the songs exactly like they were on the first Danzig album. Right? The drum fills were all good. The guitar leads were just like the record. The only differences were, like in Mother, I have to drop out for a second to play a rhythm chord. It's like... so I have to stop, play some rhythm. But everything else was the same. The drums were great. Glenn could sing back then. It sounded really good. So it was very intense. And I was like, wow, this was so we to have something from 1988, and we were fresh, we were intense. We just we didn't stop between songs. It was incredible because End of Twisted Cane. It's just drum beat 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we go right into.
Cool. Very cool.
All these old segues, I was like, oh my God, I remember that. It was like a flashback. So that's I've been reconnecting with fans, and it's just amazing that they still remember and frankly that they still care, because I've been doing a lot of different things, and I just figured, what, it was a great time, and everybody's moved on, but I'm getting lots of requests. People wanted to learn the right way, or not the right way, but the way I recorded things and the way I played things. Because there have been probably a dozen or more guitar players with Glenn since I left, but they still struggle with some of the JC parts, But so I'm hoping that there are enough of them out there that want to learn the first 4 or 5 records from the guy who recorded it. Wrote some of those riffs, so we'll see. But how the God's Kill came out 30 years ago in the summer, and we've been getting a bunch more interview requests, and it's been fun, and teaching since COVID's kind of, with the vaccines, things are breaking through, things are opening up a little bit. Had a chance to go out. People are real hungry to go out and see some live music. Enrollment at the local community college where I'm teaching a bunch of rock and roll ensemble classes has shot up. One group I've got 2 great drummers and 2 great keyboard players and a few good singers. Another group I have like 8 singers.
Nice.
Two sets of brothers and sisters, college age, in the same group, and it's like wild. We're doing Don't Stop Me Now and Don't Stop Believing, and we're doing What Was I Thinking. We're doing Cover of the Rolling Stone. We're doing For Baltimore. We're doing Learning to Fly. What else are we doing? We're doing a bunch of stuff. So and everybody's in panic mode right now because Thanksgiving, like this semester, all the concerts, right? The ensembles, they end up with a concert at the end of the semester, and ours this semester are December 6th and December 7th. So a lot of the groups, they miss a rehearsal or two because of Thanksgiving. So that's why I was teaching late tonight. People are trying to squeeze time in and everything, and because then we're off for the rest of this week. Then we have one dress rehearsal, and then the following week, boom, is the concert, and their semester's done. I got paperwork at finals and all that kind of stuff for a couple other classes, but it's going well. COVID was slow. I only had one class and a handful of students, and all of a sudden Now I got 5 classes and a whole bunch of students, and it's just like nuts. So the amount of time I'm putting in, I'm really down to making about 75 cents an hour. But I figure I'm paying my dues for a second shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You might have answered my question already, but with the story with the 5-year-old, but can you talk a little bit about the satisfaction of being the teacher? And you probably have a wide range of students, maybe some beginner, some advanced, and that satisfaction of when they catch on or kind of live their dream a little bit.
Satisfaction. So, yeah, I do like it when the lights go. And I did have the privilege. Now, here's another funny story. You ready for a funny story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, yes, when the lights go on, it's really fun. Over the summer, I was going to teach for a kids' camp at the college, the summer camp. They call it, here's the term, quote, edu /tainment. Edutainment. So I was like, oh, wait, so you're calling me a teacher, but really I'm a babysitter for your kids, right? But I was going to do a guitar camp, and I said, all right, I'll do a guitar camp for 8 to 10-year-olds, no problem. So we're setting up the class, and I said, all right, we're going to, blah, blah, blah. We're going to get the kids on guitars and playing drums and all this stuff, put together a little rock and roll band. Well, the director emails me and calls me and says, enrollment's not great for the guitar thing in this. And I'm like, well, how many kids we need for the run? They're like, well, we need 8. I'm like, wow, that's a lot, for the credit side, we only need 4. And they're like, well, a different budget and this. And I said, well, let's see what happens. And then she sends me an email and she goes, well, John, enrollment for your guitar class is only at 4 students, but we've got some other classes with a lot of interest and we don't have teachers. And I was like, okay. The little red flag went up. Yeah. Warning, Will Robinson, warning. Do not say yes. And I was like, so what are we talking? And they said, well, there's an engineering class for kids. There's, some drawing. There's some craft. I said, oh, engineering would be great. She said, all right, I'll get back to you. Next day, sorry, got a teacher for engineering, but I do have a class that you might be perfect for. I was like, what? She said, it's called Diamonds and Dinosaurs. So I said, wait a second. She said, there's good news and there's bad news. I said, all right, give me the good news. The class is sold out. There's 16.
Oh, wow.
Give me the bad news. They're all 6 and 7-year-olds.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
And your guitar camp was going to be from 8 to noon. Diamonds and Dinosaurs is from 9 to 4:30.
Oh,
but it's only for a week, and you'll get 2 assistants that will be able to help you, and blah 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 blah. So I said, I'll think about it. So I ended up taking it. I don't know why. I guess I was just curious. I said, let me see if I can pass the FBI screening. They find out who I am. They're never going to pass me. I won't have to teach this class anyway. So I went and I got fingerprinted and I got interviewed and vetted and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know, they missed it. So they passed me. So then I screwed myself. So now I'm obligated for a week to teach this class. And I get into it and I find a couple of days in that, what the kids really like is to watch Minions movies.
Yeah.
And Power Bots. And they like to dance. And they have these little study breaks. So, you get on YouTube for kids and they do these little dance things and all this Disney stuff. And then they love you. And I had a gig. So it's a Monday to Friday class. I had a Friday gig. A friend of mine who happens to be the guy working on my guitar and his bass player, who happens to be my plumber, are in a band together. So they're like, hey, would you come out and play some Danzig with us? And we're also going to play some Sabbath. I'm like, what's Sabbath? And he goes,
Nice.
you know. And I'm like, all right. So I'm practicing that stuff while the kids are on their potty breaks and they're doing their lunches and this and that. Now, mind you, it's August. It's the hottest week of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking these kids out. We're digging in the dirt. We're digging for dinosaur bones and everything. And, you know, and I'm just laughing. I'm going, if they only knew my history.
Yeah.
You know, here's this former demonic headbanger being entrusted with 16, 6, and 7-year-olds. But, you know, I did some research. I pulled up some videos, taught them about diamonds, did a bunch of dinosaur videos. I taught them how to draw a T-Rex and a Stegosaurus, Triceratops, you know, Tommy the pterodactyl. You know, we named everything. And I brought my guitar to class, so I learned all these silly video songs, you know, and sing along. So I got a kick out of it by the end of the week. And somebody came in, and there are a couple of pictures floating around out there of that. There are a couple of pictures. I'm sitting there playing an Ibanez guitar with a Prince T-shirt on, and there's a girl in front of me that's got these little pigtails watching. So it was an interesting thing, but I figured, you know what, this will be good for me because I'm getting back in there. I got to get my own business going. I got to ramp up. You know, we're all pulling our bootstraps up from COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're digging out. We're getting back up on the grid, as it were, and technology's changing, and there are lots of new challenges. I'm like, well, you know what? If I can teach these kids, I can teach anybody. And so after I did that, enrollment came up just for the credit side. The director of the continuing education program who ran the kids camp said, you know, I appreciate you teaching the class. Do you have any other ideas? And I said, yeah, I got a ton of ideas for classes, but the credit side, because it's a 2-year institution, everything's supposed to transfer to like University of Maryland or Towson or whatever. They don't want classes unless you have a serious enrollment, because they have to get it accredited and everything. She said, well, we don't have that issue on the continuing ed side. It's just for the community. And I said, all right. She said, what class you got? I said, I call it stress-free guitar. I said, so you come for 6 weeks and you leave your cell phone at the door and you just plug your guitar in, and we're going to talk guitar. You don't have to be an advanced player. You can be a beginner. All you need is the love of guitar. I said, I got incense. I got candles. I got a ton of guitars and amplifiers. We got drums, pianos, bongos, you know, bass guitars, anything you need. And it was great. You know, we had a good time, and sometimes the class turned into, I was just teaching them riffs. Like I had 10 guitar players going. So a lot, you know, when I was a kid, that was the first song you learned was Smoke on the Water, right? And this class was a variety. There were some people my age, some people a little older, and some younger. There were a couple of guys that could play, and then there's some other that had played even in cover bands 20 or 30 years ago, so they were just picking it up again. So a lot of it was they like the older rock and roll, you know, and I'm showing them riffs and how things work. You know, they love that kind of stuff, and the older guys love the Beatles. So I show them these riffs and where they came from and what's the right technique to do it. And all of a sudden I get all these guys asking me questions, what's the scale and what's the key? And start talking about blues and progressions. And it was 6 weeks, but the class, guess how long each class was?
I don't know.
What do you think?
An hour a day.
So it's 1 day a week for 2.5 hours.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long class.
Yeah. It is a long class.
And it was the last class of my week. So, and it didn't start until 6 o'clock at night. So it's running straight to 8:30, and then people want to talk and this, and I got to break down the room. So I'm not getting home until 10:30 at night. Mm-hmm. I'm leaving at 10 in the morning because I got to teach some regular college classes and then some lessons, and then I got this Thursday night thing going. But it was fun because I made the rules. I came up with the content. I taught what I wanted. If I just wanted to watch videos, and play riffs or just take questions. And, it was interesting because the age span was really wide and the skill level was also wide. So I had to come up with a way to connect with all these different players from all different backgrounds in real time. So what I ended up doing was I wore my guitar. I had like a 25-foot cable, and I plugged into an amp. And in the performance room, there's some track lighting, and they were turned a certain way. So depending on the older people, some of them couldn't see too well, so I'd have to hit my marks. I get duct tape on the floor so I could stand there, and the spotlight would be like on my 5th fret so they could see my hands, And I'm like, all right, we're going to do Crossroads, and we go to the 5 chord. 4. I said, it's blues, 8 chord. Some people could do the pattern. Other people couldn't. They could just go. I said, that's fine, just hang out and do that, right? Mm-hmm. But they didn't know what a blues progression was. They didn't know how to count to 4. It's just like they didn't know what a measure was, a bar was. They didn't understand where any of it came from. So sometimes it would devolve into this intense theory lesson of what 1, 4, 5 actually means, and the names of the chords and what makes up a triad and a 7th chord, and the fact that blues is all 7ths, not just triads, but you can play just power chords or you can just play roots. And it's not all about the pentatonic Bach scale, in one position. There are 5 positions of that, and it goes on and on and on and on. You get the fact that I do this? Okay, so anyway. but we're having fun, and they're letting me create my own classes. So amongst the regular grind and daily purge of all the paperwork and computer stuff and attendance and grading and all, I'm like, listen, man, I need a guitar tech and I need an intern to do all this stupid paperwork. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I said, look, I got 19 kids in this class, and I said, and I like to teach at a level way up here. But if I got to spend all these hours doing attendance and grading papers and book reports and concert reports and all this kind of stuff, that's cutting into my time. My level of teaching is going to drop. They don't get it. They don't understand. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, folks, I understand. We're in Gooberville, Maryland here, okay? It's not Berkeley, and it's not NYU or the New School or whatever. And I said, I understand, but I'm just telling you, you guys have no clue what you got and what these students are getting. So I'm going to make this place better than I found it, but I'm just looking for a better offer. Anybody got one?
I want to switch gears on you, though. You were also involved with working with students that suffer from physical limitations. Can you kind of give us an insight on your approach to adaptive music education?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so the first premise is accept the student where they are. Some students, they have limitations, cognitive limitations. Other ones are purely physical. I like to tease my friends that most of them are affected more than one way. But my students, I'll get older students that played music their whole lives, but then they, got married, had kids, and, did the whole career thing and didn't do music for 20 or 30 years. Well, now they're picking it up again. Mm-hmm. But their bodies are worn out, and they got arthritis, and the hands aren't flexible.
Yeah.
It's painful to hold the metal strings down. They can't play a C chord a normal way. Their fingers, some fingers just do not bend right. So I have to, whatever music we're working on, I have to completely rewrite it and work it to work with their anatomy, teach them creative ways to practice, because the traditional stuff just will not work for them. Mm-hmm. If I try and push them on it, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to get sore, and they're going to quit. And they're not going to practice, and they're not going to have fun.
Right.
So I just say, well, you came to the right place, because I'm absolutely crazy, insane, and I'm a genius. So we're going to make this work. I don't know how. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly for a while, but I'll figure it out. And because a lot of these people, they love music. And that's the other thing. You get a credit student, they'll take you for an elective class or whatever, and they'll practice the day of their lesson. You got 7 days in a week, and they practice for an hour and 10 minutes before the lesson and think I won't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
That's right.
I could tell by the color of their skin and the look on their face when they walk into my studio if they practiced or not. They think they're going to pull one over on me. But anyway, so I just laugh. But the other continuing ed students, they're there because they love it. Mm-hmm. They love music. And so I can instantly connect with them, and I say, don't worry, here's the thing. When you're an adult and you've been a responsible, functioning adult for decades, there's a maturity there. And if you love music, that means your ear, right? Your ear for music is highly sophisticated. Mm. But your hands are underdeveloped. Your coordination is infantile at best. So there's an instant conflict, because as adults, we want things. We're goal-oriented, and we expect ourselves to be able to perform at our artificial standard that we've created, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And guitar is not an easy instrument. It's difficult. And if you're just picking it up for the first time, it's painful.
Yeah.
And you have to work through months and months of finger pain to progress and get to a certain point. And when you have physical limitations, they're going to experience more pain and frustration. So I've got to be way more patient and way more positive and understanding. And I don't know where it came from, but a thing that I've discovered is that I can sit there and watch a musician hold an instrument and play. I just see it. I hear it and I see it. I know what they need to do to be smoother, to be faster, to be more efficient, more concise. And as we work with their disabilities and limitations, then that gives me the boundaries of what I have to work with. And it's a challenge to a lot of people. They always want to learn how to read music, or they learned to read music when they were a kid playing piano, but the guitar is completely different than piano. For one thing, piano, you've got 5 fingers on your left hand, 5 fingers on your right hand. On guitar, you got 4 fingers on your left hand, and if you're classical, you've got 4 on your right. Mm-hmm. If you're playing with the pick or finger style, that changes it. And the piano, each finger strikes a key, strikes a hammer, strikes a string. Well, on guitar, your left hand isn't really striking much of anything a lot of the time. Your right hand is concerned with actually the percussive strike of the string and coordinating that and timing with the fretting of the left hand. So you've got all the cerebellum, the frontal cortex of your brain is firing a bazillion messages at once. So these older students cannot fire. We have to break it down to where you're sending single messages to one finger, to one string, to one fret, to explain what the sensations are supposed to be, what it feels like when they're doing it right, how they have to transition from one note to the next when they're shaping a chord, blah, 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 blah. And it takes a lot of time. But when you see somebody older and they really love it, and you figure them out how they learn, and you're able to provide that information the way no one else ever has, they light up like a Christmas tree. And when they come back the next week or a few weeks later, and you can see the progress in them, and you're like, well, I guess I'm not a total asshole. I'm doing some good in the world.
Well, not only are you known as the heavy metal guitar shredder, you also teach the mandolin, the banjo, the ukulele, bass guitar composition. Yeah. For you, which instrument do you find to be the most challenging? Has it always been the guitar to be the most challenging instrument to play?
Actually, the banjo. The banjo kills me because there's a drone string. So on the 5-string banjo, you've got a drone G string, and the right hand is fine. It's fun. You can strum it, you can pick it, pluck it, pinch it, whatever you want to do. But the left hand, the banjo neck is really, really skinny.
Yeah.
And because up until like the 5th fret, you've only got 4 strings there, and then it goes up and you have 5. Well, there's like this optical illusion because your right hand is engaged in playing 5 strings all the time, but your left hand is just fretting 4 strings. And it's a constant struggle to get the patterns right. And the neck is so darn skinny that my fingers are just sliding and flying all over the place. Yeah. And the banjo strings are so doggone skinny that I press them down too hard and they are always going sharp. It's like one of those things where a good, concise banjo player is barely using any effort to fret the notes and to pick the strings and all this. It's very fluid, but it's messed up because you got 5 strings playing 8 notes, 8-note rolls with 5 strings. So you've always got odd against even, even against odd, odd against even, even against odd. And it's different than the guitar, and the tuning's different. So that's more of a challenge for me. But in that case, I tell myself, okay, all I have to do is stay better than my student. I don't have to be a virtuoso. I just got to cram a couple of songs ahead of them so that I could teach them and show them the right way to do it. While I'm struggling nearly as much as they are. So that's very, very humbling. It's almost like it felt almost the same when I teach mostly right-handed students, but occasionally I'll get left-handed guitar students, right?
Yeah.
So everything, even my verbal explanations are all backwards. So you have to reconceptualize the whole lesson plan. I can't write out any chord charts or anything the normal way because they see it opposite, right? Mm-hmm, everything's upside down. So I started turning my guitar upside down and trying to play left-handed to teach the left-handed students. And it was a near disaster, but the students really enjoyed watching me struggle.
Yeah.
to play the most rudimentary thing. And I said, so if nothing else, I said, look, guys, I understand the difficulty. I understand the struggle. And the discipline is in taking consistent time to discover the beauty behind each note that you play. And don't get hung up on your goal. But you've heard this, it's all the process. It's the work. It's not the result. The result is enjoying the practice.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where you get to connect to the universal source of all music and energy and life and all that kind of thing, so then it gets metaphysical. And that, for older students with disabilities, they understand the metaphysical part of it. And some of them, they'll come in, I didn't practice at all this week, my eye, I had an operation on my eye and my arthritis is kicking up, and I see 4 of you right now. And I said, all right, just look at the 2 in the middle, forget the other ones.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, so let's do something else. If you didn't practice that, blah, 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 blah. And I said, just the act that they got up, they got dressed, they got in their car, they brought their guitar in, they went through the routine. I said, you did the hardest part. You showed up. Every time you show up, it gets easier. And I said, and you're safe. You come in, you shut that door behind you, the outside world disappears. I said, for the next hour or so, it's just music. It's just safe. It's just fun. It's just exploration. Let the static go. Some students, it might take them 10, 15 minutes just to shrug off that intense pace of daily modern life, right?
Oh, yeah.
They can't focus on a finger and a pick on a string because just there's so much pressure from the outside world. So I have my ways of trying to relax people, and some of my students, I feel badly for them. They take medicine because they're nervous to play in lessons.
Yeah.
Their hands shake. I said, I appreciate the fact that you're nervous in front of me, and I said, but it doesn't matter. I said, whether they shake or they don't shake, I have certain philosophies. Everything's always going to sound better at home. You're always going to be more comfortable in your own practice space. When you come to me, I'm immediately going to assess what you've been doing all week, and I'm going to change it on the spot. So how can you perform?
Yeah.
Whatever you practiced and worked on, I'm just going to cut it to pieces and make you start over anyway. So just give that whole, standard thing away. But anyway. So that's part of what I do on a daily basis, and I put the people sign up for these rock ensembles, and I get strangers, and I turn them into bands.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to take it back to 1999, Flesh Caffeine. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to do your first solo album there?
Yeah, that a lot of songs that I've written over the years for Danzig, and most of them, got turned down. The band didn't like them, or Glenn didn't like them for one reason or another. So I just recorded little bits and just saved the tapes.
Yeah.
And after I left the group, I did some porn soundtracks and I did some studio work. Some of it was great. I mean, I got to, I did some studio work with, Robert Trujillo played bass. There was a Metallica tribute album.
Yeah.
One of the guys played guitar in Kiss, and his brother, and they did these compilation albums. And, so they asked me if I wanted to play guitar on Enter Sandman. I was like, yeah, who else is playing? They're like, well, I think, Carmine Appice's playing drums, and Robert Trujillo's playing bass, and the singer for Fear Factory is singing.
Oh, wow.
What's that guy's name? It's a cool name.
Burton Seabell.
Burton, yes,
Yeah.
Burton. So Burton was playing, and but I didn't get to meet any of them. It was all like you just showed up at your studio time and you did your session, you cut your tracks, and they cut you a check, and boom, you're in and out in a couple hours.
Nice.
So I was like, oh, that was fun, and it was a great track,
I know as a fan, I always like those compilation albums, and you think of it like you're thinking, oh, it'd be cool. These guys are all in the studio at the same time, and then you find out later they're not.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed, but at the same time, I was like, well, I could say I played with them, or I'm on the same track with them, and it was cool because they already had the guitar rhythm tracks and the bass track. They already had all that stuff done. They just needed a couple of solos and like I call it a squeal track, or I just come in with the harmonic and let's see. Just that kind of stuff, I didn't do it to the note like that, I did a bunch of different stuff, I did some wah-wah stuff and all that, but I had fun with it. It was cool. I would like to have done some other stuff, but and I did some television work, and I did some movie soundtrack work. I played with Lou Rawls.
Yeah.
Yep, I did backed up in a house band for Lou Rawls and Tom Jones.
Yeah,
and that was pretty cool. They were on a variety show, and one of my friends is a producer on the show, so he hired me as one of the musicians. So that was like fun, but it was all sporadic stuff. And when I left Danzig, I thought, well, management, they'll hook me up. The record company, they'll hook me up. There'll be another band, blah, 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 blah. There'll be a gig, nothing. The phone, I couldn't get, I had to beg to get meetings and all this kind of stuff. And, because I was like, well, I want to do an album and this and that. And I was talking to some different singers. I talked to Susan Silver that was married to Chris Cornell. He said he might sing a tune or two. So I started writing songs.
Yeah.
And this was when AOL was pretty big back then, right? So I had a big AOL following, and I was like, well, what do you guys want to hear? Do you want to hear Danzig type of stuff, or do you want to hear like guitar instrumental stuff, or do you want to hear punk rock stuff? Because I had done, for one of the guitar magazines, I did a song called For Christ's Sake. And it went into all these Satriani, harmony parts and all this kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun. But I didn't know what to do. So I just asked the fans, what do you want to hear? And I listened to some of the feedback, and I started piecing together an album, and it became the Murphy's Law album from hell. Because I started out getting some incredible breaks, like an ex-girlfriend. I helped her get a gig at A&M Records in Hollywood, and one of her friends was an engineer there, Mike Baumgartner, and he'd worked on some Danzig stuff, and he was now the head engineer over there, and he's like, hey, I can get you in, come in, after sessions and stuff on weekends. And I'm like, great. And it gave me a discounted rate. And I'm like, I'm actually going to record my own album at A&M. This is incredible. So I auditioned a bunch of drummers, and was trying to find singers, and singers, they're hard to find. Good singers, you got to pay them a ton.
Yeah.
And the rest will tell you they're good singers, but then, they just come in the studio and you can't cut it. So I needed to go and get things going. Long story short, I get a drummer, I go in and start tracking. I play the bass, I play the guitar. The drummer's great. The Swedish guy is Stefan Svensson. He's still in LA doing session work and creating music for everything from commercials to fashion shows to TV stuff. And he did a great job. And I was having the time of my life because I'm tracking heavy guitars in A&M studios. And, it was coming out thick and it was coming out heavy. And I had the lyrics and stuff written, but I hadn't started singing anything yet. So I learned to track an album the absolute wrong way. I mean, with Danzig, we had a full group. You go in, you set up in a live room, you play the stuff down, and your big concern is getting the drums right?
Yeah.
It's called tracking sessions. Everything, you got guitar, bass, vocals, and drums. The vocals are more or less done, not completely, but you get a scratch track, and you're trying to capture the drums and everything right. Well, I didn't have singers. I might do a scratch track here or there. It's okay. It didn't have to be perfect. And then I'm tracking guitar and drums, and then I fill in all the other parts after the drummer leaves. And then I'm just building this wall of guitars, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm getting more excited. We break for Christmas, and we're going to start up again in the second week of January. The 2nd of January, the engineer calls me from Florida, and he says, "Hey, JC, I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm not coming back to L.A." I'm like, "What do you mean? We're halfway through the album." "Well, I kind of hooked up with my high school sweetheart over the holidays, and I'm not coming back." I said, "You're not what?" He said, "No, man, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to leave you in a bind, but I'm not coming back." And he said, and also A&M's being sold to Jim Henson, the guy that does the Muppets, so your tapes are locked in A&M. I'm not sure how you're going to get the masters. So I'm like, this was the beginning of the album from L. So anyway, that went on for months and months. And finally, I work out some of that stuff. The guitars are great. I get the vocals. And the engineer who'd been an assistant engineer on the Black album, we were starting to do vocals, and he goes, "I don't like the way you sing." And I said, "Well, I'm not sure you're the greatest engineer." And he goes, "Maybe you should get a real singer to come in and do this." And I said, "Well, you're fired.
Yeah.
And let me think about that." So this was the beginning of summer, so I fired him. And with my tail between my legs, I went home. And I took my girlfriend out to dinner in a nice steakhouse. And they had live music there, and I was watching the band. Our waiter came up to the table and was humming a song. And I don't know, conversation started. Turned out he was a backing chorus singer for the LA Opera.
Oh, okay.
And he taught voice. So you know what happened next. I hired him to teach me voice.
Yeah.
So crash course for 6 months of voice lessons all summer. I tried to figure out how I was going to sing this stuff that was out of my range and too high. He's like, "You're never going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to finish the record. Forget about going on tour." I was like, "Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to hear." So in 3 months, I did 6 months worth of work. I went back, got another studio, got another engineer, learned the joy of Pro Tools, and, went back in to hammer out the rest of the record, and was able to get a favor from a mastering engineer at A&M and got it together and put the thing out. But by the time the album came out, I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I spent a ton of money that I didn't have, and the economy was tanking. It was like the 90s dot bomb hit, right?
Yeah.
Right in the end. So nobody was spending money. I couldn't get a record deal. Then there was Spitfire Records out of Long Island wanted to give me a record deal. So I went to see a couple of their bands, Hair of the Dog and some of the other people. They said, yeah, they're nice guys, but they won't give you tour support. You're going to have to put it on your credit card. And I was like, what? They said, yeah, they'll want you to come in. They'll give you some money. They'll want you to re-record your whole project. And then they'll tell you that they're going to give you tour support, but it's all going to end up going on your credit card. And I was like, well, that's not a kind of deal I can do. So, that was just, those are just a few details of real life as a musician in Hollywood, what kind of stuff can happen. And I had one good meeting with Rob Zombie's manager, and he was like, JC said, don't do it with your own money, man. Don't spend your own money on the album. And I was like, okay. So I exhausted everybody I could in Hollywood, and that was, if it was going to come out, I was going to have to pay for it. So I did. And then I put a band together, and our first gig was going to be at Ricky Rackman's Bordello. Ricky Rackman used to be on Metal. Was it Metal Shop?
Headbangers Ball.
Headbangers Ball, right. The week before the gig, the bass player goes MIA. Can't find him. And can't have rehearsals because the bass player's not there. He was a good guy. He was a great bass player. He sang great. Because I needed to have, in order for me to do the John Christ thing, I needed like 3 vocalists that could all sing and sing in harmony because I had all these stacks of vocals. He disappears. Somehow I tracked down his girlfriend. I said, he told me that, this and that something's going on, that he broke his arm and all this kind of stuff, and that he wasn't working. She goes, no, he didn't break his arm. I'll tell you exactly what happened, that mother. She said, we just broke up. She said, that son of a bitch, he won't tell you this. He found a band. He moved in. He's living at their studio. They're working on a record right now. That whole thing about his job and breaking his arm is just a lie.
Oh man.
So that's the kind of stuff. I can't make that up, right?
Yeah.
It was just bizarre, and I'm just going, oh my God, man. Maybe I'm in the wrong business. So I showed up at the club by myself with my guitar and said, sorry, folks, I played a Danzig medley. I played a little Flesh Caffeine medley, and I thanked the other bands that were covering my spot. And then I was there with a buddy, and he grabbed my guitar. We hopped in his truck, and I left Hollywood. Didn't look back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, John, we're out of our allotted time for the evening. But before
we're just getting started.
I know.
Yeah. Sorry, man. We have to do a John Christ Part 3 sometime. So, but
That's right.
Before we let you go for the evening, you did say to me that you're investigating releasing Flesh Caffeine on vinyl. How real is this?
Well, I was looking around, and I don't know about you guys if you do spend any time on that little social media thing called YouTube.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so they've got my algorithm just like hammered, right? I'm just peppered by all kinds of guitar ads and all this other stuff. And there's some cool vinyl houses in like Kentucky and Missouri that are reasonable, that are apparently doing some great work and putting out some really good products. And I just started saying, Flesh Caffeine on vinyl might sound really sweet, nice and warm. And I did an interview with a couple of guys out of Chicago, and they connected me with some thrash metal and speed metal guys in Sweden and Norway. And they were like, whatever happened to you? You just disappeared. You left Danzig and just like fell off the grid. And blah, blah, blah. I said, you guys don't even want to know what happened. That's another that's another 3 interviews right there. But they said, well, we just wanted to tell you that, our biggest disappointment. I was like, what? And they said, you never toured with Flesh Caffeine. They said, we get people over here that have worn that disc out. They would love you to come over and tour. And I was like, get out. I needed to hear this like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 22 years ago. Where were you 22 years ago?
Yeah.
you know, and they're like naming the songs and lyrics of the songs and the guitar sounds and the solos and this and that, blah, 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 blah. I was like, wow, you know, it's like I just found out this year that there's a group of people out there that got it, that got what I was trying to do.
Yeah. That's awesome.
You know, I wasn't trying to be a great singer or this and that. I was trying to finish a record. But the guitar leads, the guitar work, I wanted it to be flawless. I wanted it to be heavy. I wanted it to be tight. I wanted there to be layers that made sense. And every guitar lead was just the right one for that song. No more, no less, you know. And these guys were just like giving me those exact statements unprompted in foreign languages. I'm going, who told you that? They're like, no, me and my friends. So they were kicking around the idea of trying to get bands together that could support me in playing Flesh Caffeine album and some Danzig covers. You know, and trying to do some festivals here and there. So as far as I've gotten is, of course, Europe sells out a year in advance and they book out, but South America is a bit looser in style, and you know, there are tons of metalheads down there. So who knows? I got a couple of connections in Colombia and Rio and Sao Paulo, one in Santiago, Chile. So a friend is trying to reach out to Pantera's old singer Phil and Selmo, and you know, see if they might have some stuff. So basically what's happened is I tried to hide from the heavy metal scene and stay, you know, just out of the limelight about the grid, but you guys are bugging me and you're sucking me back into it.
Awesome. Well, we're about 2 to 3 weeks behind schedule on our episodes, but Jeff, the editing wizard, will have this all cleaned up. We'll send it to you as soon as it's ready to go. All right.
Thank you for coming on tonight.
It's been a pleasure, like
You're
usual.
welcome, guys. Yep. And, you know, like I said, life is crazy. It's busy, but it's all good. But I am looking for opportunities. I want to start teaching like workshops and seminars, maybe a day and a half, of just teaching the first 4 Danzig albums from the guy who recorded it.
Nice.
That'd be fantastic.
And I'm trying to put that kind of package together, you know, and trying to get the word out. Also, I want to be the 21st century, like Steve Vai gunslinger. I'm the guitar player that if you're going to Japan and your guitarist comes up with COVID and you got a gig in 2 days, who do you call?
John Christ.
You call John Christ. You send him a playlist and he'll be ready by the time he lands to do the gig.
That'd be awesome.
So that, and I'd like to do some high-end corporate cocktail parties in Dubai for like 50 or 60 grand.
Yeah.
That'd be fantastic.
I want to play for the sheiks.
There you go. All right, John.
So you guys you gotta plug me in somewhere.
We'll do it, man. Hey, you know, we're always in contact with other artists that are always looking to collaborate with other artists. So
yeah, no, I'd love it. You know, we're all in this alone together, and you never know what where the chemistry is going to come from, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. Thank you. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too.
I appreciate your patience and flexibility and keeping after me.
Absolutely, man. It was an honor to have you on again.
Well, it's a pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. You know, let's do it again and keep it rocking.
All right, man. Be well. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Take care.
Same to you guys.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
triple fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it.